begin Lent always with the temptation story. And it's really impossible for me to think about the temptation story without going all the way back to the temptation story in Genesis. We remember when Eve had her run-in with the devil. And so I want to compare and contrast Jesus' and Eve's interaction with, and I want to call the devil the tempter. I think sometimes when we think about the devil, we have this preconceived image of something, and I want us to think of the devil this morning as the tempter, the one who tempts us. Okay? So that's what I'm going to call him, her, as we continue. Eve had just been created, and the devil, the tempter, came to her when she was alone. Jesus had just gone through his baptism, and the Spirit drove him out into the desert where he was alone. The tempter took the Word of God and twisted it just enough so that it sounded like truth but wasn't truth. He said to Eve, "Did God say that you can't eat of any of the trees in the garden?" And Eve said, "No, we can eat of any of the trees in the garden, but we can't eat of the tree in the middle. And if we touch it, we will die." And the tempter said, "No, that's not true. God just doesn't want you to know the difference between good and evil. He wants to keep you away from this tree." And so Eve kind of chewed on that a little bit and thought about it. But Jesus, the tempter, took the Word of God and twisted it and challenged him. "If you are the Son of God, prove it to me." Well, we all know what happens with Eve. Eve took the apple and took a bite, gave it to Adam, and as a result of this, they were separated more from God. It didn't bring them closer to God, it brought them farther away from God. And we also know that Jesus did not take the tempter's challenge. And as a result of what he did and his ability to not take the challenge in that way, he was brought closer to God. When we give into temptation, we are separated from God, we are alienated from each other, and our own self-esteem and self-worth diminishes little by little by little. So why is it that God even allows temptation to be a part of our world? I'm glad you asked. And that leads me to our Lenten series. You've probably been getting the information about, and our series for Lent is called Fearless, the courage to question. Fearless, the courage to question. You know, poor Vicky, she's been asking me for information on this, and we kind of really wanted to just tweak your interest and have you come and see what was going to be happening here. We believe, as your worship leaders have been planning worship, we really believe that we are separated from God, that there are barriers between us and God. Many of them, most of them, we erect ourselves. And so what we want to do on this journey of Lent is to go with you, and we've erected this wall, and we will lift up in these next 6 weeks some things that have kept us separated from God, and we together are going to tear down this wall. And hopefully, as we gather, you will also be given some tools and some ways that you can deal with the things in your life that are keeping you separated from God. So that's what we're going to be doing in the next 6 weeks. Now why did Jesus, one of the other questions was, what does Jesus' temptation have to do with his ministry? Well, it has everything to do with his ministry. Because of who we are and how we are created, we need to know that it is possible for us to resist the tempter. And that is why at the very beginning of his ministry, before he does anything else, Jesus shows us that we do not have to respond to this tempter, this temptation that is a part of our lives. So what can we learn from Jesus' interaction with the tempter this morning? First of all, the thing we can learn is to put some time away with God. The Spirit sent him out into the desert. He was out extended period of time with God, spending time with God. Now, in Lent, many of us talk about fasting. Has anybody thought about fasting during Lent this year? Is anybody? So, would you be willing to say what you're going to fast from?
I would be fasting from watching TV in the evening that keeps me from doing my other job that needs to be done.
Okay, Joel, very good. Anybody else, Vicki, you want to share?
I was thinking of anything that has to do with a chip.
But there you go. That's a great transition. I didn't plan to either. What I want to say is, in the latest issue of Newsweek, there's a thing about overload of our brains. We are so connected with Twitter and Facebook and texting and TV and internet. And I want to say to us and encourage us this morning, the two of them have given us a perfect example. What would it be for us to set aside time where we were not engaged in electronics? Whether it's a day, I don't know how many of you try to call me on my day off, but usually on my day off, I don't go check my email, and I do carry my cell phone with me. But it's really important to me that I have a day that I can just rest and be with God and try to get my energy back up a little bit. So I want you to think about that. Set aside some time when you're not engaged with something with a disc or with the boob tube, as we used to call it when I was a kid. Put aside some time for God. Because when we accept this temptation, when we're tempted and we take it, it separates us from God. It alienates us from each other. And it diminishes our self-worth and our soul. Little by little by little.